Hello and welcome. Please take a seat, get cosy, and enjoy a ghostly cup of terror. With me, Stephanie Valentine. Hello, my spooky little pumpkins. How are you all? Thank you for joining me today. I hope you are all keeping well. So today is a ghostly cup of terror because I couldn't decide if this case should be a ghost stories and spooky tales video or if it should be a cup of terror video. So I decided to combine the two. So have you got a drink? I've got my tea in my cute Star Trek mug. I'm very warm and cozy. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm filming this. I am exhausted, but let's get into this mystery. Just west of Oxford is a place where a manor house used to be. That house was the scene of an incident that caused a huge scandal in Elizabethan England. Amy Dudley was married to Robert Dudley, who would later become the Earl of Leicester. Only 10 years after their marriage, Amy died at the foot of a staircase in Cumnor Place, the manor house she was living in. At first glance, it looked like a tragic accident, but soon mystery and gossip surrounded the incident. Was it really an accident? Was it an act of suicide? Or was it in fact murder? Her tragic death has remained one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Confusingly, it is actually a Berkshire haunting because Cumnor was in the county of Berkshire until 1974 when county boundaries moved, and then it became part of Oxfordshire. Cumnor Place no longer exists as the house was demolished in 1810. The house was mainly built in the 14th century. It was a large building formerly belonging to the dissolved monastery of Abingdon. The house was rented and then eventually bought out by Robert Dudley's friend, Sir Anthony Forster, and he altered it quite a bit in the late 16th century. After the death occurred there, the house eventually stopped being used as a home and it fell into disrepair, eventually being completely demolished in 1810 by the Earl of Abingdon, and the bricks, the foundation, was used to rebuild Whitham Church. Amy Robsart was born in Norfolk in 1532. And she grew up near Norfolk. She was the daughter of Sir John Robsart, a wealthy Norfolk landowner. She married Robert Dudley on the 5th of June 1550. They were both around the age of 18. Dudley was a younger son of John Dudley, 1st Duke of Northumberland. He also had the title of Earl of Warwick. And John Dudley, he was one of the most influential men in the country at the time. Robert was said to be handsome and very ambitious. So Robert and Amy settled in Norfolk, and their early married life seemed to be happy. Robert gained properties and official titles after their marriage, but he wouldn't receive his famous title of Earl of Leicester until 3 years after Amy's death. In 1553, his father tried to install Lady Jane Grey on the English throne after the death of King Edward VI. Lady Jane was Edward's cousin and was married to one of John Dudley's other sons. Lady Jane Grey famously ruled the country for just 9 days before it all went wrong and the Privy Council changed their minds and they proclaimed Mary as Queen. Because he was the main supporter of it all, the Duke of Northumberland, John Dudley, he was accused of treason and executed less than a month later. Robert, he got caught up in all of this, as he was a son of the Duke. And even though he didn't do anything, he ended up being sentenced to death as well and imprisoned in the Tower of London until October 1554. I remember going on a school trip to Bradgate Park in Leicestershire when I was around 10 or 11, I think. And I think Lady Jane Grey was born there or lived there, something like that. Anyway, there were some ruins there. I think they're still there. And I remember being like so excited, thinking that I might see the ghost of Lady Jane Grey. I know it's very silly. She is supposed to haunt somewhere. I can't remember if it is Bradgate Park, but anyway, we were talking about it on the way there, and I was so excited at potentially seeing a ghost. Oh, I love that school trip. I think that was one of my favourites ever. It was so much fun when life was a lot simpler, a lot easier. And was that the trip where I was like constantly listening to No Scrubs by TLC? Ah, good times. Like I said, when life was a lot easier and a lot simpler. Anyway, nostalgia trip over. Back to the story. Elizabeth I eventually was made queen in 1558. The Dudleys struggled financially until she became queen. Robert Dudley was then made Master of the Horse, which used to be a very important position. You would be an important official of the sovereign's household. You'd be a member of the court. You'd also be a privy councillor. And basically the role was like anything to do with the horses and the stables, that sort of thing. That would be under that person's authority. Amy had a love rival when it came to her husband, and it was none other than Queen Elizabeth I. Their love affair, if you could call it that, was strong and has fascinated people for centuries. Various books and movies have been made about their friendship, their relationship. So Queen Elizabeth I was very fond of Sir Robert Dudley. He was an important figure at the royal court, and he would very regularly attend any proceedings in court. Elizabeth I's court was a very grand affair. There was lots of dancing, pageants, loads of food, hunting, as well as all the, kind of political business that she would take care of. So Dudley was having a grand old time at court, and he was fast becoming the Queen's favourite person. The Queen grew more and more fond of Dudley. In fact, she was very attracted to him, and she would spend a lot of time with him. I think Dudley was pretty much the only man that Queen Elizabeth I ever considered as a husband. Famously, she remained unmarried throughout her reign. Their close friendship soon resulted in many rumours. The main gossip at court was that Robert wanted to be rid of his wife so that he could marry the Queen. There were rumours that Elizabeth might have married him if he were available. Other rumours suggested that the Queen was waiting for Amy to die, as Amy was apparently suffering from a malady of the breast, thought to be breast cancer, and then that would free up Robert to marry her. There was so much gossip in court, especially from political enemies who wanted to spread some malicious lies, do a bit of a smear campaign. 500 years later, things haven't really changed much in that respect, have they? Amy wasn't involved in her husband's political life. It wasn't customary for the courtiers' wives to live at court. So whilst Dudley was living at court for long periods of time, having a grand old time, Amy would stay in various houses that belonged to friends. She moved to Sir Richard Verney's house in Warwickshire by September 1559. He was a politician and an associate of Dudley's. And by December that same year, she was at Cumnor Place with Sir Anthony Forster, who was treasurer of Dudley's household accounts. Her husband would visit her from time to time, but it did seem that they spent most of their married life apart. Lady Amy Dudley visited her husband in 1559, staying in London for about a month. She'd apparently been ill before that visit, and there were rumours that Dudley was poisoning her. That trip to London was the last time Amy would see her husband. On Sunday, the 8th of September, 1560, at the age of only 28, Amy Dudley was found dead at the bottom of a flight of stairs in Cumnor Place, with what was thought to be head injuries and a broken neck. On the day of her death, Amy had ordered all her household to go to a fair which was being held at Abingdon. Her companion, Mrs. Odingsell, she didn't agree with this. She didn't think that Sunday was an appropriate day for decent folks to go to a fair. Amy got very cross at this. She was very angry, and again she ordered them all to go to the fair. They all did. They all went to the fair except for Mrs. Odingsell, who insisted on staying at home, and Mrs. Owen, who was the wife of the Queen's physician, and she remained at the house as well. When the staff returned, they found Amy dead at the bottom of a flight of stairs. Her personal maid, her maid loved Amy. She was interviewed at the time, and she basically said that Amy was suffering with some sort of mental illness, perhaps depression, and she was unhappy. So some people think that it was a suicide. When Amy's death was discovered, oh my goodness, the scandal, the controversy it caused throughout England. Many people thought that her death was suspicious. I mean, you had all the gossip, all the rumours that were circulating before her death. No wonder it all kind of blew up when Amy did end up dying. Her death, yes, it did look like an accident at first glance, but soon everyone was speculating about what really might have happened. Many thought it was strange that most of the household servants were sent away that day, although, a couple of the staff were still at the house on the day. And many did think that it was quite unlikely that she would die from just a fall downstairs, although obviously we know that it does happen. The most prominent theory was that she was murdered in order to allow her husband to be with Queen Elizabeth I, and that the death was set up to look like an accident. Many thought Dudley had conspired with his friend Sir Anthony Forster to kill his wife and to set up the crime scene to look like an accident. Some people even thought that the Queen was involved too. Scandalous, I told you. However, this didn't help Dudley at all, because once the Queen found out about the rumours, she was horrified. She realised that she couldn't marry Dudley after all. I mean, politically, it was going to be pretty impossible to do so after all the scandal and all the rumours. She sent Dudley away from court and told him not to come back until Amy was buried. Amy was buried in the chancel of the University Church of St. Mary the Virgin in Oxford. Her funeral, it was a very grand affair. It was very expensive, but whilst Dudley paid for it, he wasn't present on the day, which didn't exactly make him look good. As for the Queen and Dudley's relationship, well, I'm not sure if their friendship ever was quite as close and intimate as it used to be, at least openly. But she still gave him the title of Earl of Leicester, and she gave him Kenilworth Castle and lots of land in North Wales. So there was obviously still some affection and connection there. There was an inquest which was unable to find any evidence of foul play, and at the trial the jury returned a verdict of accidental death. Lady Dudley's relatives accepted the accidental death verdict. The locals, however, back in Cumnor, they had no doubt that it was murder. They refused to accept the verdict of accidental death. Soon there were rumours going around that Amy's ghost was haunting the house and grounds. The atmosphere at Cumnor Place following Amy's death was described as oppressive and uncomfortable. The ghost made the superstitious locals scared to go near the place, and it destroyed the peace of the village. According to Alfred Bartlett, in his historical account of Cumnor Place from 1850, he wrote, "The apparition was said to appear chiefly in the form of a beautiful woman, superbly attired, and was mostly to be seen at the foot of a stone staircase in the north-western angle of the building, where the remains of her ladyship are said to have been discovered." So her ghost had apparently been seen on the stairs where she broke her neck in a fall. Coincidence or proof that the rumours and gossip are true? Folklore tells of 9 clergymen from Oxford that took part in an exorcism to exorcise Amy's ghost from Cumnor Place and bring back peace to the area. During the exorcism, they performed a ritual where they trap the spirit, and they did so by trapping it in water. In this case, it was a local pond. The spirit was drowned in that pond, which I'm assuming means that the exorcism was successful. I read that some locals believed that the ghost was still trapped there because to this day the pond, which became known as Madame Dudley's Pond, never freezes over, no matter how cold it gets. I think, though, that it meant that poor Amy was finally at peace at last, her spirit laid to rest. But even if she was successfully exorcised or trapped or whatever had happened to her ghost was still seen around the area. Alfred Bartlett said that not everyone believed that she really had been laid to rest. More than 100 years before his writing, part of the building had been repaired and used as a home and workplace by a farmer, and later it was made into rooms, lodgings for workers. It was not a peaceful stay, apparently. According to Bartlett, the ghost continued to terrorise and annoy the inhabitants. At times they would be awoken from their sleep in the middle of the night by just the weirdest and the most terrifying noises, apparently. There is another legend regarding Lady Amy Dudley and her ghost. She is said to have appeared to her husband and prophesied his death. It's actually linked to another haunted place in Oxfordshire that I would love to do a video on. So Cornbury Park is a private estate in Charlbury, Oxfordshire, and it contains part of the ancient forest of Wychwood, which has been around since the Anglo-Saxon times. It's super old and ancient. I really want to do a video on Wychwood Forest. There is so much history there, and there are some spooky stories as well. So, Sir Robert Dudley was out hunting at Cornbury Park in August 1588 when he got separated from the rest of his hunting party. In front of him, He then saw the spirit of his dead wife, who had died nearly 40 years before. She told him that they would be reunited in 10 days. According to the legend, Sir Robert Dudley did indeed die 10 days later on the 4th of September, 1588. Spooky. There have been a few factors that have given people reason to speculate and argue over the true circumstances of Amy's death. One is that for a very long time, the record of the coroner's inquest into Amy's death had apparently not survived. More on that in a moment. And then in 1584, 24 years after Amy's death, the enemies of Robert Dudley and the Queen brought out a document which has come to be known as Leicester's Commonwealth, and it was an attack against Dudley. The documents claim that Robert Dudley murdered Amy, and not just her. They claim that he also murdered other people. It said that Amy was locked in the house with Sir Richard Verney, and he tried to poison her at first, and then he broke her neck. But there's no proper evidence for any of these claims, it seems. It's just allegations at this point, I think. There was no evidence that Richard Verney was anywhere near Cumnor at the time. So everyone read Leicester's Commonwealth at the time, and the Queen ended up having to ban it because the accusations and the speculations got a bit much. So back to the coroner's inquest. Back in 2010, the original coroner's report on Amy's death was discovered in the National Archives by historian Stephen Gunn. Interestingly, in the report, as well as a broken neck, the coroner records 2 impacts that caused 2 deep wounds to Amy's head. There weren't any other injuries either, which would be expected in a fall down a stone staircase. The coroner still concluded that it was an accident, but it does make the accident theory look a bit more doubtful. It was also discovered that the foreman of the jury inquest, Sir Robert Smith, he may have known Dudley, despite Dudley claiming that he didn't know anything about him. Dudley gave him gifts 6 years after the trial, and Smith also wrote to Dudley before the jury gave their verdict. Another thing, one member of the jury was said to be employed by him. So can you even consider that? Can you even say that the jury really was an impartial jury? I don't know, it does kind of make it all look a bit suspicious. But no one knows for sure what really happened. I don't think even back then, those involved in the court and those close to Amy, they never seemed to learn what actually happened. It hasn't stopped centuries of debate and argument, though. As for what I think, you know what, I really can't say. This is a toughie. There wasn't really any forensic knowledge back then. They didn't really have the knowledge or science or equipment to prove a lot of things. So there's barely any evidence either way. And any written accounts, they're 500 years old. I don't know how accurate or reliable they would be. I'm not sure, really. I mean, was Robert Dudley ambitious enough to kill his wife in order to free himself to marry the Queen? I mean, he was neglectful of his wife, but if you had the kind of job that Dudley did, most of them didn't see their wives very often. I mean, some of the things he did was pretty fishy, like pretending not to know the jury member and not attending her funeral. and he really did like the Queen, but all those rumours, they were already flying around the country before Amy died, and Dudley surely would have known that the scandal and the gossip would have killed off any chance to be considered husband material for the Queen. So I don't know, I feel like it was kind of pointless for him to do it. And also Amy was said to be ill. So again, surely it makes no sense to risk anything by hurrying her death along. They weren't silly. But then I think about how it was Amy herself who ordered her staff to go to the fair. So maybe it was suicide? But then again, I mean, it could have been someone else entirely, an enemy of Dudley, perhaps, and they were trying to ruin his reputation by framing him and ensuring that he couldn't marry the Queen. But it definitely is suspicious. But at the end of the day, it really could have been just a tragic but innocent accident. I don't know. It's so tricky. I can see why people have been arguing about this for hundreds of years. At the end of the day, though, I feel very sad for Amy in all of this. She was basically pushed aside by her husband, who she still loved. He went off and he left her behind. He had this relationship with the Queen, and Amy would have heard all of the rumours and gossip in sordid detail, I'm sure. And she was ill, having to deal with all that on your own. And she was probably very lonely and potentially suffering with depression. But it's very, very sad, very tragic, whatever happened. There is so much information out there about this unsolved mystery. There's a million articles, books, videos, so if you really wanted to delve into this case, you can, but be prepared, though, for all the arguing that people seem to do with each other. I wanted to end this video with a visit to St Michael's Church in Cumnor, but even though it's not far from me at all, I just haven't had the time to visit, sadly. But the main reason I wanted to go there was because of there's a couple of things, the only things that have survived this historic and infamous drama/love triangle. Hanging on the vestry wall is a portrait of the Earl of Leicester, and next to him is a tiny picture of his wife and 2 faded letters written by her. And then there is apparently an almost life-size statue of Queen Elizabeth I, which is said to have been made on the orders of Robert Dudley. It's quite fitting, in a sad and tragic way, that the Queen is so big compared to the other two, and especially Amy. A reminder that the Queen was always bigger in every way, more powerful, more wealthy, more influence, and she seemingly received more love and admiration from Amy's husband than Amy ever did. So, what do you guys think? Do you think it was just a fatal accident? Or do you think that Amy's husband did have a hand in her mysterious death? Let me know what your thoughts are. So thank you for hanging out with me today and spending time watching this. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I do have a second channel that I have set up, which is going to be predominantly for my convention vlogs, horror movie reviews, kind of, more casual type videos. So I'll pop a link down below if you are interested in seeing my convention videos. Yes, I thought it would be better to separate the two. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And please join me next time for another cup of terror.